Okay, now we are starting a new chapter, chapter 9 on hypothesis testing. So in this chapter, I'm going to be honest with you. The concepts get a little bit more difficult. So we have these ideas of null hypothesis significance testing, p-values, statistical significance. So they can be confusing and overwhelming. So in addition to reading the book, watch some of my introductory videos on these concepts. I go into a little bit more detail than the book. Not that the book is poorly written or that it's wrong, but I just take a lot more information and give you a little bit more of the background so that you can understand the concepts better. So generally speaking, we test a hypothesis that we have with null hypothesis significance testing. Ultimately, we look at what's called the p-value. The smaller it is, the more likely we are to reject the null hypothesis. So commonly, a value of 0.05 is what we use to evaluate hypotheses. So if you have a p-value that's smaller than that, we reject the null and we say that the results are statistically significant. So this chapter is about inferential statistics and hypothesis testing. So how it works is we use hypothesis testing to determine whether a statement that we have about the value of a population parameter should or should not be rejected. So remember, inferential statistics is when we go from a sample, and what we do is we want to really understand something about the population. So the whole idea is that we use this hypothesis testing, right, because we have some type of statement about a population parameter, and we want to know, we have some hypothesis about it, and we want to know that hypothesis, that statement that we're making, should it be supported or not. And so that's the whole idea of hypothesis testing tied in with inferential statistics. So one question sometimes I get is, well, do we want to reject the null hypothesis? Do we want to have a small p-value and get rid of that null hypothesis? So the first thing to understand is what the null hypothesis is. Basically, it says that there's no difference, there's no effect. So in my line of work, the research that I do, typically we might have, for example, like a leadership training or a leadership theory where we're saying that there's this theory and we think that it's an effective approach to leadership. So transformational leadership, for example. So it's when you basically get others to go above and beyond what they normally would do. So you're really inspiring and lifting people. So if we think that that's effective, right, we would have this hypothesis that this is a good, effective leadership style. So from this perspective, if we're doing research, we would love to find a small p-value to reject our null hypothesis that says that, hey, there is no effect of this training. So in my line of work, yeah, we want a small p-value because we want to reject the null hypothesis that says there's no effect, there's no difference. But in other areas of research, so if you're doing like quality control, it's a little different. And so this, I don't do quality control. So say like you have manufacturing, you have soda bottles. So usually they say like how many ounces are in them. So from that perspective with quality controls, what you'd do is you'd say that your null hypothesis would be saying that things are running smoothly, bottles are properly being filled. So from that perspective, you don't want to reject the null hypothesis, because if you did, that would be saying that your manufacturing, your processes there are out of alignment and you need to tweak something. And so obviously from that perspective, you wouldn't want that. You'd want to know that things are properly running in your manufacturing plant, that bottles are properly being filled. So there's just those different perspectives. So two things. One, in this chapter, we're going to learn about null hypothesis significance testing in three areas. And we've seen these before, right? The population mean when standard deviation of the population is known and unknown. So we use the z-test and the t-test for those, and then for population proportion. So we've seen those in previous chapters. So again, we're going to apply the hypothesis testing in these areas. And last, this is pretty important. Please recognize that there is a debate about null hypothesis significance testing and p-values in terms of should they be used and even should they be taught. So there is debate. Some people say that there's flaws with them. We shouldn't be using them. Regardless, because it is so commonly used, we are going to learn about it. It's something that I don't see going away anytime soon. A lot of people use it. So it is something that you probably are going to come across. So you should be aware of it. And even if things change and we don't eventually use these anymore, which I don't see it happening anytime soon, it's good to know about them. So we're going to learn about it. If you do take my business analytics course, we go into greater detail about the debate, what's going on with it, and what the other alternatives are. So please watch the next two videos I'm going to post. One is on p-values and the other is more like an introduction overview of hypothesis testing and statistical significance and all these little concepts. I don't go into great detail of the math or anything. It's more just a broad overview just to help you understand the concepts.